Okay, class, this week's topic is stretching and range of motion. So we have a few types of range of motion, or ROM as it's abbreviated. We have active and passive that we will talk about for this class. Active range of motion is how much that joint can be moved by a specific muscle contraction. So an example of that would be you raising your arm over your head because you're activating your own arm muscles to lift your arm over your head. Passive range of motion is going to be the degree to which that joint can be passively moved through a range of motion. So to contrast raising your own arm over your head, passive range of motion would be someone else lifting your arm up above your head for you while your muscles are completely relaxed. Main goals of stretching. So our main goal is to increase range of motion. Examples of that would be in different areas of the body. So we have increasing range of motion or flexibility in joints, within a muscle, in our tendons, and our fascia. There are several different types of stretching that we can do, and some are better than others, specifically when it is relating to athletic activity and trying to warm up and stretch before any type of exercise. So we have static stretching, which is going to be a passive stretching of a muscle by placing it in a maximal stretch and holding it there. So for a hamstring stretch, it would be when you're sitting on the ground and you're just reaching for your toes, holding it there in that stretched position. Ballistic is a much older technique that it can be quite bad for your muscles and it's very outdated. This uses repetitive bouncing motions. So if we're using that hamstring example, we're stretching our toes, bouncing back into a relaxed position, bouncing toward our toes again, and back and forth motion. Dynamic stretching is controlled stretches that are recommended prior to activity, and these are stretches that you do with movement. So examples of this would be performing a leg swing or a walking lunge. Now the best practice or the gold standard would be to use dynamic stretching because it is the closest related to athletic activity and movement that you will be doing during your exercise. Some guidelines for stretching. We always want to make sure that we are warming up our body 5 to 10 minutes before we stretch. So that could be going for a brisk walk, jogging up and down the field a couple times, riding an exercise bike, anything that's going to elevate your heart rate, get you sweating a little bit, and get you breathing a little bit heavy. That's going to warm up your body and make stretching more effective. When we are stretching, we want to stretch only to the point where you start to feel that tightness or a little bit of resistance in those muscles. We do not ever want to push through or to that painful point because it should not be a painful experience and you can actually overstretch and cause more damage. So we want to avoid overstretching. And then of course, be sure to continue normal deep breathing during all of these stretching techniques that can help your muscles relax. So I also want to specify two different types of muscles and muscle contractions. We have agonist versus antagonist muscles when we're talking about a contraction. So an agonist muscle is going to be the muscle that's actually contracting to cause the movement. An antagonist muscle is the muscle that's being stretched during that same movement. So we'll use a bicep curl as an example for this. When we are performing a bicep curl, so whether it's with weight or without, say we have a 5-pound weight in our hand, we're performing a bicep curl. Our agonist muscle is the bicep because it's the one that's contracting and it's shortening to cause that contraction. And during that same motion, the bicep curl, our antagonist muscle is our tricep on the backside of our arm. The reason for that is because even though it's a bicep curl, the tricep muscle is being stretched during that motion. You can also apply this to every other joint or movement in the body. So for knee flexion, same idea. Our agonist muscle, when we flex our knee, is going to be our hamstring. So knee flexion is like a hamstring curl motion, where our antagonist muscle during that hamstring curl is our quadricep muscle in the front of our thigh because it is being stretched while we're performing that knee flexion motion. We also have a very specific type of stretching that's oftentimes used in rehabilitation, like physical therapy clinics, athletic training facilities. because it's a very good way to stretch. It's called PNF, or proprioceptive neuromuscular facilitation. And this is a specific stretching technique that involves a combination of alternating between a contraction and a stretch for certain periods of time. This is really good to help regain range of motion, but also to build up strength, specifically after an injury. There are lots of different types of PNF stretching. We're not going to go over all of them in this class, but we will learn one kind. We have the slow reversal hold relax, the contract relax, and the hold relax technique. But with all of these techniques, there's going to be a 10-second active push phase of a muscle, followed by a 10-second passive relaxation phase while we're stretching the muscle, and that's usually repeated 3 times for a total of 60 seconds. So we will use the hamstring muscle group as an example of the contract relax form of PNF. So first we're going to have our patient laying on their back when the hamstring is being stretched over their head by the practitioner, usually the physical therapist or athletic trainer. The patient is going to contract the hamstring, so they're pushing their leg toward the floor during the push phase, and that's for 10 seconds. So they are pushing against the resistance of the athletic trainer. And then they will relax their hamstring, and we will passively stretch it back over their head for 10 seconds. So this is going to be repeated 3 times for a total of 60 seconds. So it's a little bit hard to explain without showing you guys. And in this week's module, there is an example of a contract relax PNF technique on a hamstring. So make sure you guys are watching that video in this week's module. That way you can get a full image of what this looks like. This is some examples of PNF positioning. So we have the person laying on their back. The practitioner is pushing their hamstring to stretch it over their hips. Then the athlete will push down against our resistance toward the floor or toward the table for 10 seconds, and then we will repeat and stretch them back for 10 seconds. We can also stretch nerves. That's called neural stretching. This is very useful for when someone has a nerve issue or condition like sciatica or any type of sciatic nerve pain. So I have a picture here of the sciatic nerve and how it can be stretched and relieve some pressure or pain throughout the leg, but you can use this for any nerve in the body. Symptoms of nerve pain would be traditional pain feeling, limited range of motion, radiating neural symptoms, which would be tingling or numbness, moving from somewhere in the spine all the way down towards your feet. And practicing is the most important way to start to learn some of these techniques and also get really good at them. So I want you guys to look at the video in this week's module. You can practice some of these stretching techniques on yourself or on someone within your household. That way you can really start to learn these techniques.